Since 1976, the United States has executed 1,546 individuals. Since 1973, 187 individuals have been released from death row because they were proven innocent, according to the Death Penalty Information Center. Imagine spending years in prison for a crime you did not commit. Imagine all that time wasted away from your friends, family, accomplishing your goals, and just living your life. You can't get that time back, and it's simply not fair. So far, 27 states are for the death penalty, including Arizona, Alabama, and Arkansas. And we have 23 non-death penalty states, including Alaska, Colorado, and Connecticut, according to the Death Penalty Information Center. These statistics should change to all 50 states abolishing the death penalty. This brings me to my proposition that the death penalty should be abolished. Before I get to my contentions, let's define a couple words. First, death penalty. I quote, an institutionalized practice designed to result in deliberately executing persons in response to actual or supposed misconduct and following an authorized, rule-governed process to conclude that the person is responsible for violating norms that warrant execution, according to the Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Basically, the death penalty is the punishment of execution, which is being put to death, and it is administered to an individual by the court of law for committing a capital offense. The second term is abolished, and I quote, to end an activity or custom officially, according to the Cambridge Dictionary. My first contention is that innocent people have been put on death row. As I said, 187 individuals have been put on death row since 1973, but then released because they were later proven innocent. An example of an individual who was wrongfully convicted was Jimmy Dennis. Jimmy Dennis was sentenced to death for a crime he did not commit. 25 and a half years of his life was stolen away. He was accused of murdering a woman named Shadell Ray Williams. A group of people accused him because of jealousy, according to Jimmy. That jealousy comes from the fact that Jimmy was starting his career in the music industry, and up until that point, everything was looking good for him. I have to mention that Jimmy was a man of color who lived in Philadelphia. He states that, and I quote, Philadelphia was notorious for police misconduct and civil rights violations. He talked about how he had alibi witnesses who were silenced or threatened and never made it before the jury. The description of the murderer didn't even match Jimmy. They described a 5'10" to 6 feet tall and 180 to 200 pound guy. Jimmy was 5'4" and 125 pounds at the time. Also, 3 out of 9 witnesses testified. The other 6 did not testify because they clearly stated that he was innocent and they did not want to lie for the police. So the police were making these witnesses lie. Also, the police had only one copy of a time-stamped receipt that supported Jimmy's story. And of course, it was never presented to the jury at trial. Because of the existence of the death penalty and being wrongfully convicted, Jimmy missed so much within those 25 and a half years. Jimmy's youngest daughter was born while he was in prison, so he didn't have a chance to watch her grow. His dad also died, whom he was really close to, and he couldn't be there with his family to properly mourn his father's death. And of course, his music career was put on pause. After writing over 1,000 letters to organizations and activists trying to gain support and have people listen to his story, he was proven innocent and released from jail in 2017. Jimmy shouldn't have gone through all of that. 25 and a half years put on death row behind bars for something you didn't even do. How is that right? How is that fair? There should not be a death row. There should not be a death penalty because there are so many stories like Jimmy's. How many people's lives do we have to waste until we can say that it's enough? How many wrongful convictions would it take? Life is precious, and we have the right to live that life to the fullest. The existence of the death penalty has taken away that right from so many individuals because of being put on death row. That is why the death penalty should be abolished. Now, at least the exonerated people get to live the rest of their lives, but there have been executions of individuals even though there was so much doubt around their case. One example would be Troy Davis's story. He was accused of shooting and killing a police officer named Mark McPhail with a .38 caliber revolver. A man named Sylvester Coles, who was there with him that night, admitted to carrying a .38 caliber revolver, and many witnesses claimed that he was the shooter. Coles was never treated as a suspect. I quote, Davis was convicted of murder based on scant physical evidence and the testimony of 9 witnesses, 7 of whom later recanted their testimony or admitted it was false, according to the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty. His case gained attention across the globe and had public figures even supporting him. There were more than 250 rallies, teach-ins, silent vigils, and other events held in cities worldwide to protest his execution. I quote, Amnesty International and other advocacy groups delivered a record number of petitions, more than 630,000, to the Georgia Board of Pardons and Parole requesting a stay of execution, according to the National Coalition to Abolish the Death Penalty. Despite all the doubt and support he had worldwide, he was put to death in 2011. Troy Davis was believed to be innocent and maintained his innocence to the day he died. It was wrong to put him to death, even though those 7 witnesses admitted that their testimony was false, and Coles even admitted that he was the one carrying the .38 caliber revolver. And again, many witnesses admitted that Coles was the shooter, not Davis. Imagine how his loved ones felt, knowing that he was put to death with no hardcore proof and knowing that he is innocent. The death penalty should be abolished so we don't risk wrongful executions. There's always that risk, and once that mistake is made, you can't take it back. People's lives are not worth risking, period. My second contention is that the death penalty does not prevent crimes. Imagine if the death penalty was abolished in the United States. Would you think the crime rates would decrease? Well, according to the author Hoyle of this article, since the abolition of the death penalty in 1973 in Australia, the reported murder rates have fallen. The same could be said about Canada and Central and Eastern European countries. Canada abolished the death penalty in 1976. 27 years later, in 2003, the rate was 43% lower than it was in 1975, which is the year before abolition. The homicide rates in Central and Eastern European countries declined by 60% after abolishing the death penalty. This proves that the death penalty does not decrease the number of homicides. There is no empirical data that proves that the death penalty prevents crimes. This article actually states the opposite. After the abolishment of the death penalty, the homicides rates decreased. If there is no significant data that proves the decrease in homicide rates along with the death penalty, then we should not be wasting that time, effort, and money. As I said, this article says the opposite. I'm not saying that in order to prevent homicides, we need to abolish the death penalty. But there are countries where after abolition, the homicide rates did go down. It might not be strictly due to the abolishment, but this proves that the crime rates don't decrease because of capital punishment. The decrease in crime rates could partly be due to longer sentences, more police officers, and or maybe a reduced number of guns. These suggestions were made by 386 randomly selected police chiefs and sheriffs who were interviewed. They said that there are more important ways to prevent violent crimes than expanding the death penalty. according to the author of this article, whose name is O'Malley. I believe that police chiefs and sheriffs would know best how to decrease violent crimes because they are on the front lines. Their entire job revolves around finding ways to deter crime. And out of 386 police chiefs and sheriffs, only 1% chose the death penalty as a primary way to reduce violent crimes. Instead of trying to reduce crimes by the use of the death penalty, we should consider other factors. For example, and I quote, dealing with the causes and situations such as poverty and drug addiction that foment crimes and violence, according to O'Malley. It is more common for people in poverty to abuse drugs and have a drug addiction. Also, the homicide rates are higher in places with more poverty, no? We need more programs in place for those who have a drug addiction and are in poverty. These people need serious help rather than being put on death row. I quote, about half the people on death row in Indonesia have been convicted of drug-related offenses. We need to get to the root of the problem rather than just killing these people off. Individuals that are for the death penalty argue that it ensures that the murderer won't be able to commit any more crimes. But don't you get the same results if an individual is sentenced to life and death in prison without parole? Why do we have to end someone's life for ultimately ending someone's life? Does that not sound hypocritical to you? They also argue that the death penalty prevents murder because of the fear of death. According to this article by Notice and Hunter, they believe that this statement is invalid because everyone does things that are risky in their lives, like driving a car, rock climbing, smoking, but does that stop them? Most of us drive every day knowing that we can get in a fatal car accident, but does that stop you from driving? Smoking can lead to lung cancer, and lung cancer can lead to death, but does that stop people from smoking? The key word here is can. You can be put on death row for a homicide, but that's not 100% guaranteed. It's not 100% guaranteed that you will be put to death. If it was 100% guaranteed that you would be put to death for murder, then maybe people would fear for their lives more and not commit the crime. But that's not the case now, is it? Notice and Hunter state that some people will be found innocent, some sentences will be appealed, and some defendants will be found insane and not even go to jail. Since murderers are not guaranteed death, the chances of them committing the murder would be higher compared to if they were guaranteed death. I quote, in 1995, a total of 3,054 prisoners were sentenced to death. Of these individuals, only 56 were actually executed. 56 out of 3,054. This proves that the death penalty does not prevent crimes because it is not certain that you would die. So people don't fear their lives that much. Because again, 56 out of 3,054. You're only risking your life by committing murder. But again, we take risks every day that put our lives on the line, that can put our lives on the line. Just by walking down the street, I could be shot and killed by somebody. That doesn't mean I will be locking myself in my house because, again, that is not guaranteed by just taking a walk outside. If it was guaranteed, then how many people would you think would do it? I wouldn't. Would you? In conclusion, the death penalty should be abolished because innocent people have been put on death row. Even if they have been exonerated, they spent years in jail for a crime they did not commit. These people were treated like criminals behind bars, hoping and praying for someone to prove their innocence. Some people have been executed despite serious doubt of their guilt. Some of these people could really have been innocent and put to death. Can you imagine those last few seconds of your life before execution, knowing you are innocent, thinking about your family and their reaction and how this is going to affect their lives? It's horrible to think about, but it has happened. Also, the death penalty does not prevent crimes because there is no empirical data that proves it. If we are not certain that capital punishment prevents crimes or significantly decreases the homicide rate, then we should not be spending the money for that. I quote, a study in California revealed that the cost of the death penalty in the state has been over $4 billion since 1978, according to the Death Penalty Information Center. In Florida, it costs $51 million a year. All this money should go to more preventable ways to reduce the crime rate. Again, many chiefs and sheriffs recommend having more police officers, dealing with poverty, and helping those with a drug addiction. There is so much we can consider rather than just placing these people on death row. Thank you.